Hey there, I'm Gab Lavoie, and today I want to talk about music and language. Quite often, we talk about music as being a language, and this is quite a useful concept. For example, it can help us to analyze compositional elements in music, such as motifs, phrases, and especially the whole idea of question and answer themes in music. Or it can also help us explain improvisation. When two musicians or more improvise with each other, it's essentially the musical equivalent of people improvising a conversation. And the greater their musical vocabulary, the more ideas they can communicate. Or finally, we might also think of harmony in music as being equivalent to grammar in language. But while we think of music in this way, we don't often ask, is music truly a language? Well, the answer is, actually it's not. And this is because of linguistics. Well, what the hell, Gab? What are you even saying? Alright, okay, so I understand some people might not like this idea, but give me a chance to explain why I believe this. If I'm going to tell you that I don't think that music counts as a language, I should probably start by telling you what does count as a language. In the 1960s, the anthropological linguist Charles Hockett identified what we call the design features of language. You can think of these as characteristics or criteria that separate human language from other animal forms of communication. There are 16 of them in total, and while I'm not going to go through all of them, Hockett would claim that all human languages possess all 16 of these design features. Even sign languages possess all 16 of these design features. So, our definition for what counts as language, then, would be any kind of communication system that can fulfill all 16 of these design features. Another way to put it is that any communication system that is missing even just one of these features would not count as a proper language. That was a lot of technical jargon, so let me give you an example of a design feature to show just how important this concept is. What is likely the paramount design feature of language is what we call openness. This is the ability to talk about the same experience from different perspectives, using different words and various grammatical constructions. This feature allows people to conceptualize, label, and discuss the same experience in different ways. Well, Gab, that still sounds really abstract. And you're right, so let's look at a proper example. Let's contrast human language to the call systems used by primates such as monkeys, gorillas, and bonobos. In this system, primates have certain calls that are only appropriate in certain circumstances or situations. For example, a monkey might have a certain call for when they find food, when they're in danger, or when they want to try to find a mate. And to make things a little more complicated, or perhaps more simple actually, you can't mix and match these calls to form more complex meanings. So, let's say we have this call, which means that this gorilla is in danger, versus this call, which means that they want to try and find a mate. You can't use the danger call to try and find a mate, nor vice versa. They only make sense in their appropriate situations. And you can't combine them together to make some new meaning either. So we wouldn't say that this call system possesses the design feature of openness, because each call can only mean one thing. Now, let's compare with human language. Let's take a look at the English phrase, "You've been a bad boy, haven't you?" Unlike the primate call systems that we saw earlier, you could maybe imagine using this phrase in more than one situation appropriately. For example, in one situation, if you're a parent, maybe you will say this to your child or to your dog or your pet if you suspect that they've been misbehaving. That's one way, but in another situation, someone might say this very flirtatiously to try and seduce a man that they're interested in. Or, let's go even simpler than that. Let's think of all the different ways that we can say that we're hungry. You could say, "I'm hungry, I'm famished, I'm starving, my stomach feels empty, I'm low on fuel, I have a craving for some Turkish delight." I don't actually, but all that to say that there's a lot of different ways to say that you're hungry. This is exactly what we mean by the openness of language. The same things can be described by many different words, and the same words can also mean many different things. And I think this also shows why these design features are just so important in making a language properly a language. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. For music to be properly considered a language, it has to possess all 16 of these design features. And unfortunately, there's a few important ones that it is missing. One in particular is the design feature of prevarication. And this is the fact that people can use language to lie, and they can also use language to make statements that are grammatically correct, but semantically nonsensical. Making up nonsense with language is pretty easy, and Noam Chomsky has a good example for us. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Grammatically it's fine, but how is something both colorless and green? That's a contradiction. And lying with language is really easy too. For example, I can say that I have red hair. That's a lie because I know it's blue. That was another lie because I know that it's actually brown. But can we do those same things with music? Personally, I have a hard time seeing how we can, even if I want it to be true. We can kind of get close to nonsense. Like, for example, if you imagine someone just aimlessly pounding out these dissonant clusters on their piano. Their performance might not be very meaningful, but I don't think you can go as far to say that it's nonsense or contradictory. Even if those clusters are like meaningless and really dissonant, that's not the same thing as a logical contradiction. On top of that, how does someone produce a lie in music? Like, how does one write a piece of music that contains a falsity or an untruth? I really have no idea. Like, I don't think it's possible. The one thing you can maybe think of is like, you can play a mistake, you can play a wrong note when you're playing a piece. But that's not still the same thing as a lie. And it's only really wrong if it wasn't intentional, but that's still not the same thing as a lie. Like, to speak a lie is to speak something that you know isn't the truth. And I don't see how you can do that in music. I don't think that music operates on a notion of true and false. I think it's something else entirely. And so because of that, music doesn't have that design feature of language that we call prevarication. You can't make contradictory statements, nonsense, and you can't lie in music. So while using the analogy of music as a language can be really useful to explain how music works, we've seen that music does not count as a proper language. And this is because it's missing some of those design features of language. Those, again, are the characteristics without which a communication system cannot properly be called a language. But what is music then? Because it's certainly more than a primate call system. Like, if it's not a language, what is it? Unfortunately, I'm afraid to say I don't really have a proper answer for you at this time. But personally, I'm pretty happy to describe music simply as music. That being said though, if you do have ideas on what it is, please let me know in the comments, because I would very much like to return to this topic one day and give you a proper answer on that. And I'm interested in exploring some ideas and concepts on what music might be if it's not a language. So that's all for today. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought of it, if you disagree with my take, or if you have any ideas on exploring this subject further. If you want to see more content like this, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and to hit that bell so you get notifications. My name's Gab Lavoie, and we'll see you in the next one.